Right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In this week's video, today I am taking you through my full quad workout 8 weeks out of my first ever bodybuilding show. This was during my biggest high day of prep, a 6,000 calorie full day of eating. The daily vlog for that will be in the description below for you to check out if you're curious to see what I ate. It was a good one. There was some burger and fries, there was some ice cream, muffins, jam, all good stuff. So be sure to check it out. But without further ado, 8 weeks out, quad workout, let's get into it. Okay, so exercise one, we have the leg extension. On the prime leg extension, this is my favorite leg extension that there is out there. 4x15 as a rep range. What I will tend to do on this video, barring maybe the hack squat, is take you through the first set of the pyramid, which is kind of like a warm-up acclimation set, and then the top set to show you how I go all the way to failure, how I go all out, how I attack my top sets, as those are the ones that matter the most. You'll see that I've loaded up the bottom peg with just a 10, just a slight bit in that shortened range. The reason for this is the leg extension is one of the, if not the only quad movement that can prioritize and really work the quad in the shortened range. For example, like a squat, you may lose some tension at the top. On a hack squat, tension at the top, the tension is very much predominantly in the length and range where it should be for the most growth, but you still don't want to neglect that shortened range. Therefore, a little bit of load there and the rest in the mid range of the movement. So what we are making sure to do is really use the active range of motion. So we're coming all the way back, slight pause in that length and range to remove the momentum, and then shooting up and squeezing at that top, because it's all well and good putting load in that end range, but if you're not utilizing the time, trying to extend that time under tension in that end range, then what is the point in putting the load there if you're just going to fall straight back out of it? I've got my wrist wraps on to ensure that I'm pulled into the seat and it's my quads driving the movement predominantly, and as much as possible maximizing the stimulus placed upon the quads and tension put upon the quads, as opposed to letting my hips jump up as I do the rep and other contributing muscles add to the total movement, taking tension and therefore stimulus off of the quads. Another key thing in terms of setup is to make sure that your seat is as far back that it allows you to still stay in an active range of motion. You don't have your seat too far back that your knees squash against the edge of the seat before you've reached your peak length, and as obviously you'll be taking away the range of motion. But what this will allow you to do is to lean back more, and the longer you lean back, it creates a better lever to stretch that quad in that length and range, and in that eccentric really get a better lengthening of the quad. This is going to allow for, like I said, a greater active range of motion and therefore more muscular growth within the quad muscle. Furthermore, I have the foot pad a little bit higher up just because it means that I'm less likely to push through my foot and therefore incorporate some of my calf and then anterior tibialis muscles, which you will feel in your calf if you're not doing it properly. Toes pointed upwards, not too much that you're using your anterior tibialis and fatiguing that front bit of your shin, the muscle by your shin bone, but toes up and have it the foot pad a bit higher if possible. What this also allows is to take more tension off the knee. As your lever gets longer, the stress placed upon the patella increases. So by just moving up that slight little bit, you're still allowing for a full range of motion to maximize stress upon the quads, but you're also taking some of that tension off your knees, which will save you in the long run, trust me. And then we finish off with a nice little quad flex there, one exercise in. That muffin pump is certainly going straight to the quads. So secondly, we're on to our first squatting pattern of the quad workout. I've got my Ronnies on. By Ronnies, I mean the red leggings, and it is hack squat. I reverse band this hack squat for the sole purpose of this one. This Enquiries pre-core has been battered over the use of it so that it is very stiff in that mid-range, and it kind of like you shoot up, get stuck and then finish up, and it's just not a very nice resistant profile to squat through and can be very harsh on the knees. Obviously that's another reason why you would reverse band the thing if you have bad knees. However, as it is a first exercise, if I didn't need to, I would opt to not use a reverse band. Maybe if it was my second squatting pattern, I would do so just to take some of that tension off of the beginning range. However, 5x10 is the setup for this one. Again, pyramid mid and up in weight each time. You'll see a rep or two from each of my pyramids stages in this compilation before we get to our top set. I got the buzz from a mixture of the higher food and the pre-workout, as today I was going to go a bit lighter. However, I decided to jump the gun a bit and add an extra half plate to my fourth and penultimate set, which therefore left me in the depths when it came to that top set. Key things here, I go a bit narrower in my foot placement to maximize the use of my quads and try and get some extra emphasis on that outer sweep of the quads, but mainly to keep the tension on my quads and minimize the use of my adductors and glutes to drive the movement. You can also do this by making sure you're pressed up against that back pad and therefore keeping more tension on the quads as opposed to your posterior muscles. You also want to be having your foot placement as low down on the foot plate as you possibly can before your heels lift off of the foot plate. I'm wearing squat shoes, so there has a little bit of heel elevation to begin with, which means that I need to go a little bit higher up to make sure that I can use and really utilize that wedge at the bottom of the squat shoes. But it's very individualistic and person dependent, so just try it out for yourself, see what works for you. And if you need to go a little bit wider or a little bit higher, that's where you feel it less in your knees, feel it less in your lower back, feel it less in your glutes, and more on the quads most importantly, then that is what you need to do. What I'm doing here, I'm making sure to keep constant tension on the muscle. So when I get to the top of each rep, I'm not taking a 10-second break. I'm coming up and down, up and down. And when I start to get tired on that penultimate or that top set, if I need to stop for half a second at the top just to catch my breath and re-brace for the sake of safety and proper form and execution, that trade-off is worth it. But I'm not spending 5 to 10 seconds at the top of each rep just to squeeze out another rep for the log, as this is not in line with how I am training my quads. Time under tension, constant tension on the muscle, and a couple of grinders at the end to maximize the output of your top sets. That also being said, time under tension, what I'm not doing is I'm not just falling straight out of the top range just for the sake of constant tension. I'm not just falling straight out of it, letting the band take the resistance and then catching it with my knees, as this is obviously not ideal, not optimal, not a good thing to do if you're trying to grow your quads and your legs. I'm doing a rep and then I'm coming down, keeping tension on the quads, really thinking about fighting that losing battle with the machine during that eccentric portion, getting to the bottom of the movement, not just springing straight out and relying on the band to save me, using that band as a way of keeping tension off the knees in that length and range before I shoot. Down, slight pause, shoot, while keeping constant tension on the muscle, on the quads, to maximize tension, therefore stimulus, and therefore the ultimate goal of maximizing your quad growth. Okay, so exercise 3 and our second and final squat pattern for the workout is the pendulum squat. I absolutely adore this pendulum squat. It is so savage, so brutal, and so good for the quads. Again, a 5x10 is the pyramid setup for this exercise. Again, similarly to the hack squat, narrower foot stance, as this is where I'm more comfortable, this is where I feel stronger, this is where I can put the most emphasis on the quads and reduce the contribution of the adductors and the posterior agonistic muscle groups like the glutes and the lower back. Also making sure to push my lower back into that back pad to ensure the most safety and the most tension upon the quads. Really making sure not to cheat the movement, coming down into that bottom of the pendulum, making sure your hamstring touches your calf, try and get your bum as close to your heel as possible without releasing tension and without caving your knees either way, thinking of putting your knees forward and pushing out, forward, pushing out, increasing that knee flexion, as knee flexion is the biggest contributor to leg growth. So forward, up, knee flexion, quad growth, not out and in, as this is taking tension off the quads first of all, and most importantly is compromising your knee health and your longevity in the sport. So we're pyramiding up, and what I've done is I showed you my penultimate set here where I got close to failure. This is how I do my last set before the top set. It is still a working set. The first set may be more of a warm-up acclimation set like I mentioned before. The next two, the last couple of reps are working set weight. The penultimate set being one where the last half of the set is a hard set, and then that top set being the one where we go all out, giving it our all and to the max, to the failure point. The reason I showed you it as well as that is because this top set killed me off, and what I will do is after the set I'll leave a blank bit for you to hear me. Luckily I put the safety stoppers one up because I did that after a couple of sets because there was no one to save me, no spotter, and that could have been a very bad end to the day. Okay, here is a new machine to the channel. I'm not sure if I've even shown you me doing the pendulum before, but I certainly haven't shown you this new bit of kit, the Gymleco hip press. This machine is absolutely adored by myself. I love it. Different setup for this one, 2 sets. We are warm by now. We do not need as many of these working sets accumulating volume, as volume has been accrued a fair amount in the previous exercises. So 2 sets, 1 top set straight off the bat. What I do is I throw a couple of plates on, just do a couple of reps to get used to the new movement pattern, get my body used to pressing in that movement plane, and to make sure the jump isn't too much and I end up hurting myself. So a couple of feeders and then top set. The top set is a 10 to 15. It's my first time using this. As you'll see, there's a little bit of bum lift as I'm working out the complete active range of motion. It's a hip press, so you do want a little bit of shift in the pelvis, a little bit of pelvic tilt to get used to those hips and the glutes, because you're going to be pressing some of the movement with the glutes, but this is a quad workout. So what I found in my next set, my rest pause set, which you will see with some time jumps between the 20-second rest pause that I do between each of the stages, is I put my feet a little bit lower, decrease the distance traveled backwards, but still keeping a greater active range of motion, because the knee flexion is the same if not more. So I'm coming up more like that as opposed to coming back and having that pelvic tilt. So instead of coming up like this, I'm coming up like this to get some more knee flexion and more quad tension, as it is a quad workout, and then getting some secondary and indirect glute work through obviously it being in a hip press machine. But yeah, like I said, the rest pause set, I do a 30 rep rest pause. So instead of doing a stage rest pause you may have heard of, do a set, take some seconds, do a set, take some seconds and do your final bit and you get what you get. Instead, we have a rep target as opposed to a stage target. 30 reps, pick your weight, do as many reps as you can and try and do it in as least stages as possible. Obviously, if you're doing it in 2, you want to increase the weight. If you're doing it in 10, you probably want to decrease the weight. I do it in around that 5 mark, the 4 to 5 stages. So I do rest, do rest, do rest, and either finish or do a final one afterwards. And then I usually use the 15 rep mark as a indicator of taking a low progression, as you don't want to do half of them in your first one, as you will end up doing it in 2 or 3 stages. But that is brutal, and it absolutely finishes off the workout, absolutely finishes off your quads and absolutely kills you off. And like I said, new machine, I forgot that you had to re-rack it at the end. I didn't know where the rack point was. I nearly crushed myself. Luckily, my friend Will gave me a few reps at the end of that just to get the most out of that last working set, and then was there to save me and remind me to rack the machine. Okay, so that wraps up the quad portion of the workout. However, I do have another exercise that I forgot to film. Too busy thinking about my Five Guys burger and fries. Spoiler alert, you should have checked it out when I told you at the beginning of the video. But if you do want to see what I got and the total daily amount of that 6,000 calorie full day of eating on a high day refeed on my first ever bodybuilding prep, then the link is in the description below for you to check that out. I haven't ruined too much because there is a plethora of food and it's better to see it for yourself. But I finish off with adductors, 4x20, pyramid and up, same as everything else, minus obviously the hip press. Talk you through a few tips, execution techniques and things that I do to maximize my adductor growth without the video footage to show it, but I'll just talk you through it now. What I do is I tend to turn my knees out a little bit and put my heels in a little bit as I do it. This allows me to contract the adductor before I've even started the set, creating a little bit of isometric tension before you start. It's easier to keep tension on a muscle that is readily contracted rather than trying to find that sweet spot while you're performing the set. Also, this machine, the Panata one that I use, the backrest comes back, so it creates a greater active range of motion, allowing you for you to open up your hips a lot easier without taking tension off of your adductors. When you're leant forward a little bit, the tension will come off and onto your hips and you'll feel it in your hips, your glutes and your lower back. However, when you're leant back, similarly to the leg extension, you can keep the tension in the desired place, so the adductors in this case, as a result. Minimizing momentum in the changes of direction. Obviously this is a given. Obviously this is what I've mentioned about almost every exercise, but take a little break in that length and range to get that full stretch and not just use momentum to spring you back into your next rep, so you're keeping tension. Time under tension is increased because you're keeping constant tension on the muscle throughout each rep of the set, and squeezing in that fully shortened range to make sure you're squeezing that blood out of the stone, as this is an isolation exercise, so we want to isolate the muscle and we really want to make sure that we are contracting it as much as possible at every given opportunity on every single concentric for every single rep of the set. Don't go too heavy because you'll use other muscles like your lower leg. That's another thing. Try and push through your knees and your inner thigh as opposed to pushing with your lower leg, so pushing through your heels and your ankles. I know I said turn out your heels, but turn out your heels allows you to flex your adductors and then push through the knees. So they're just extra little bits of dangly limb at the bottom of your leg, keeping that emphasis on your upper thigh. But that wraps up the workout and therefore the video for this week. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, click that notification bell so you do not miss when I upload twice a week through this prep series. Wednesday, Saturday is the general days. However, this is probably going to come out on a Thursday and then the following vlog on a Sunday, and then we will be back to the Wednesday, Saturday schedule. But that's why you need the notification bell turned on so you don't miss when we upload and you know exactly when the video goes live. Share this video to a friend, help everyone to grow their legs. Operation Big Legs this year. Leave a comment down below if there's any other workout exercises, other themes you want me to talk through, or any other sort of videos that you want me to do through my bodybuilding prep, or just in general in terms of gym training and fitness. But that is all for now. I'll catch you in the next one. I'm out.